Okay, I think we're ready to get going here. Welcome to our last session. We've got using the REST API to power your campus communications. We've got Cory and John. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. My name is John Gough. I am the principal strategist at Higher Metric. You've seen our booth. You've seen us walking around. We've met some of you guys. We are excited and impressed that there are so many people here on the last session on Saturday afternoon. Nobody's gone early to karaoke, so we appreciate you being here.
We kind of hoped you would.
We'll have a warm-up at the end of this, and then I'll go down together. This is Cory. Cory, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Cory Crowley. I'm the lead developer at Skyhook Interactive, which is Higher Metric basically split off from Skyhook Interactive. So I'm here helping out John on the technical aspects of the REST API. So happy to be here. Glad there's so many people here.
We really are glad.
Yeah.
So my background is UX, design, analytics. Cory's background, he's been our lead developer for years and years. He's awesome at this stuff. So most of the questions I'm sure will be for him, and I'm just here for the show. So what we're going to do in the next couple minutes is we're going to walk you through a little bit of the why, but this is the third REST API presentation of the conference. How many of you have been to the other two? Okay, the majority. You taught one of them. I don't see Dash in here. That's a little intimidating, but you're checking our work, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We learned it all from you.
No, we did. We went back and like, oh crap, that's how that works. Dang. So we're gonna go through a little bit of the why first, but because you're here, you know the why. So we're gonna try not to belabor that point. And then we're going to walk you through a use case that we've kind of put together about how a campus site that already may exist gets turned into or extended via the API. And then we've got all the code that we've used to make this available, and that's on our last slide. We'll show that to you. You guys can download it, download our slides. We'll let you into the WordPress backend and you can play with it and screw it up. So that's going to be all available to you. So without further ado, we'll get going. So any of you that have managed campus communications will recognize this scenario probably a little bit. The little furry things are your content creators, and you're the one in the hat. Okay, does this feel a little bit familiar? You've got, let's keep going. You've likely been faced with a situation where you've got many different places where content is managed, right? So you've got this content that's siloed, it's fragmented, you've got multiple different owners who all want access to something, or they're all trying to change the same thing in 6 or 7 different places. That can lead to governance and accessibility issues. This is a serious problem that in higher ed and really in all enterprise content solutions we're kind of up against all the time, right? How do we manage this big problem? And the answer, right, we're going to talk about the REST API, and so the answer is that instead of siloed content, we'd rather have siloed access, and we really are chasing that single source of truth, right? This idea that one piece of content should be managed in one place only, and if we can get that, if we can make that happen, then it's kind of like the Holy Grail. And that's the promise of the REST API. That's why we're all here. So once you get it into WordPress, the content management system that everybody really kind of gets and knows how to use, you never have to put it into another place. And so over the course of the last day or so, we've been talking to people about their communications problems and, you know, where's the pain. And one of the things that keeps coming up is faculty directory. So I don't know if everybody in this room has this problem, but a couple of people have mentioned that it's really painful to have to manage the faculty directory within their own department, and then someone else comes along, usually from higher up in the university, and say, hey, we've got this great idea. We want all of the profiles in one place. Can you put all of your content into our system? And you've done this great job curating your and they want you to go and duplicate your effort. So again, that's fragmenting your content. rather than unifying your content. And that's the one thing we're trying to avoid. Okay, so WordPress, this is vanilla WordPress, right? You've got your admin interface, you've got your front end view, right? So this is all very typical. It's a theme. You're used to this. The REST API is the thing that sits in the middle of those two things, and it slices them in two, right? So you can keep your admin as a headless instance of WordPress where you manage your content, the thing you're familiar with. The API is going to be the thing that talks back and forth to what now becomes the view, and the view can be anything you want, right? It can be your app, it can be a kiosk, it can be the website still. And you guys are all super smart, but I'm less smart than some of you when it comes to this, probably most of you when it comes to this. So I needed a metaphor to understand this whole MVC thing, right? You've got the model, which is the database. You've got the controller, which is the API. We've got the view, which is the front end. I really get comic books a little bit better than that. I'm like right on that level. So Tony Stark, he's the model, right? And not only because he's Robert Downey Jr., but also because he's the thing that makes it all work. He's where all that information lives on how to be Iron Man. The view is whatever suit he puts on. So again, we could talk about all the different mini suits he has. I could talk for a while about that. But the thing that makes that powerful is Jarvis. It's the thing that he talks to, and then he makes the suits do different things because he has that interface. And when you have that kind of controller, you can have all the different suits in the world. You've got Hulkbuster, and you've got Mark 46, which are super cool and super different. I knew you guys would appreciate. So that's your kiosk and your app and your call sign and your advertisement. They're all powered from his brain through the API. Does that make sense? You guys already knew that. Okay, so let's talk about a use case. So in the use case that we kind of came up with, we said, all right, let's imagine something that every campus needs, right? And every campus is going to have events on campus. And so we started thinking, what are all the different types of data and metadata that you might have to manage if you're going to manage events across an entire university? Obviously, titles, dates, and durations, and categories, and this is a short list of things that could be associated with any given event. And I'm sure that we could spend a few minutes together and make that list longer, but we don't need to, because any of these things might be useful in a particular view, but there are probably a certain set of them that are applicable based on what you're looking at. So on your .edu site, you've got this campus-wide event calendar. It may or may not be important to show the cost of registration on that thing, because maybe none of the events you're showing there are up for registration. But if you have an app that is going to be about orientation, then you may need certain contacts or certain different things. So thinking about all the different types of information that you could use allows you to then take next steps and build those into your system. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk, and I'm going to be the marketing director, and Cory's going to be the really smart developer, and I'm going to say, hey, Cory, we've got this really great idea. We spent like 6 or 7 weeks in design, and this is what we came up with, and this is what's been approved from the top. We're going to build this into our .edu site, it's events calendar. We're really excited about it. Can you help us with that?
Absolutely. And WordPress is the perfect platform to do something like this. At a university, they have specific content like this, like events. And so ideally, the ideal situation would be that you would build their main site, the university site, the .edu, on WordPress. And inside the university site, you would define specific content types. Because you have your normal content type, such as pages and posts, and you can only get so far with that type of information. But where WordPress starts to become powerful is when you start extending that even further to create something like an event calendar or profiles or student data, things like that. So we need to define an events post type to manage the events of the university. And so we're going to get really simple here. We're not going to be, we're not going to go through complicated code. I'm going to show you a lot of snippets and stuff like that. And then I'm going to let you guys free to look at the code later on in the presentation. But we've all seen this type of code before. We need to register the post type, which is an event. We need to make sure it's public. And we're going to make sure that it supports a title and an editor. Okay? And we want each event to be rewritten in the URL using the slug event. So it would be university.highermetrics/event/event name. Okay? So that's the first step. And then we need to define specific metadata about the event. So in this case, we're going to use some advanced custom fields. And not that we can't do it manually or define those things manually in code, but ACF is just a useful tool to get us to our finish point a lot quicker. So we're going to define some very simple metadata about an event. So the first would be every event has a start date. Every event has an end date, a start time and an end time. And then maybe we want to display specific information about the presenter of the event, and then the presenter's link. And so we're going to define our custom fields. And then the next thing we're going to do is define two more specific pieces of information that we'll need later on. The first will be an event category, because every event is about a certain topic, and you want to be able to distinguish between those topics through categories. So we're going to define the category and make sure that it shows up in the event post type and that it's rewritten with the slug event category. So the next thing we're going to define is event location, because every event, similar to event category, every event has a location. It's going to be at a specific place at the university. So it could be in the Arts Center, or it could be at a specific school or college. And even further than that, it could be in a specific room number inside that location. So by defining a hierarchical taxonomy, we can have sub-locations inside the main location. Okay? So now that we've got our event post type defined, we have our event title, we have event time, we have event date, we have presenter fields now, we have the body, we have location details, and we have a category. So now that we've defined all those things, we're ready to go with events. And we're ready to say, okay, let me build your event page that you mocked up when you very first showed it to me. Okay?
Somebody online raised their hand and something flashed up there. I don't know.
Do we need to answer it?
Yeah.
I'm probably walking too far away from the mic.
Chat. We can't hear you at the screen. Please move back to the computer. We're too far away, apparently. Sorry, guys.
Stay over here, Cory. Okay. Stay close to the ground. Flying too
Close,
high.
yeah.
Thank you.
I want to be like Iron Man. Yeah. So.
How do I make it go back?
Hit play.
I tried. Oh, there.
Okay, so we've got all this event information. Let's go through this. Sorry. Okay. So now we get to display it in the regular WordPress fashion, right? Everybody's seen this inside.
Come back.
I'm back. Okay, let me just stay here. Okay, so everybody's seen this type of information in a WordPress theme. We've got our regular WordPress theme tags, such as the title, and we can also get metadata out of ACF through functions like getField. And so this looks familiar to most people, I would assume, that develops inside WordPress. And so by doing that and developing the main site on WordPress, we get our nice mock-up. And so then I would say to our marketing manager, look what I've done. I've created it in no time at all.
You're excellent at this. Really the best that I've ever met.
I know.
But while you were gone, I got a request from the Harris Center, and they said that they have a kiosk. They've got a new event kiosk in the lobby, and they said if you could just email them a Word doc of all the events, and then they'll email you a new one every morning, and you can just sync them up real quick. So just every day, that'll be fine, right? Thanks.
Cool. Word docs. Gotcha. Okay, let me think on that.
Okay.
And
You get back to me.
I'll get back to you. Let me go back to my cave and figure out a solution besides Word docs
Okay.
that will make sense for your university. Okay? How about that?
Thank you.
Cool. So I'm sure we've all had this type of request before. I know I have. It's usually something like CSV files or Word docs or PDFs or something like that. But what if instead we offer a better solution? Since we have WordPress, the university's WordPress site is built on WordPress. We have already heard about the benefits of the REST API at this conference. Why don't we use that? So what we could say back to the marketing director is we actually have this data that's publicly accessible to the Harris Center for the kiosk. And we can make it available by doing a couple simple things. So the first thing that we need to make sure happens is that these are defined when we register our post type. Show in REST equals to true. REST base can be defined. It doesn't have to be. It's not required. And in this case, we defined it because instead of /event, we want it to be /events instead. And then we can define a REST controller class, a specific one if we want, to modify the output of the JSON that the REST API produces. But in this case, we're going to use the default post controller because that's all we need. It's a post type. We don't really need to modify the output of the information yet, so we'll just use that. If we did, we would define a different controller here. We also need to make sure that our taxonomies have the show in REST true as well. So for event category and event location, we have those defined as well. So now, inside the REST, if we access a specific HTTP URL, we get all of these routes. And we have the route for events, so events are publicly accessible now. So, and if it was behind like a university firewall or something like that, we could do some things so that the Harris Center only has access to that, to those routes and to the REST API. But we also have location and we also have category routes to get specific information about those taxonomies. And then we can say to the Harris Center developers, because I'm sure there's more developers there that share my pain, about Word docs and CSVs, we can say, hey, you could use a simple JavaScript framework, like Vue.js. Who here has used Vue.js before? Yeah, a little bit? Well, Vue.js is awesome. It's a great framework that is similar to React. Who here has heard of React.js? Wow. Nobody Vue, huh? You guys have heard of it, just not used it. Heard, just not used. Okay, cool. Well, I like Vue.js. I like React, but I like Vue.js for simple tasks like this. So I don't need a ton. I don't need to define a ton of templates. I want to define, a pretty simple HTML file for the kiosk, but I want to be able to make it reactive, but also pull information from a REST API. So Vue.js, I feel like, is the perfect candidate. So we're going to go just through a small Vue.js example of how we would do that. So the first thing that we would do is define the route that we're going to pull the data from. In this case, it's going to be that events route that we showed in the previous slide, except for we're going to add 2 parameters to it. The first parameter is the embed parameter, which gives us additional information about an event, such as the event location and category. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to put a per page number on it. So we don't want all events, we want just the most recent 10, okay? And so the last thing that we're going to do in this part, because the code is actually kind of long, so I'm displaying pieces of it here. So the first thing we're going to do is define an event location category, or event location taxonomy ID. So in this case, we want to pull all events from just the Harris Center. So the Harris Center taxonomy ID is 9. And so I've hard-coded that here, but there's definitely instances that you could make that more dynamic, okay? I've put event category as blank because I don't care. I want all events inside the Harris Center. Doesn't matter which category it's in. I want the most recent 10 events. I have some other parameters such as events count that'll give me the number of events that have returned, and I also have an events holder and a post holder, because on the mock-up that they showed us, there's also some research articles that are at the bottom. I want to get those too, and I've also defined that REST API route as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is make a type of AJAX request and get those events. I want to also make sure that the event location and event category parameters are defined if they're used. And then I want to get the events. There's some additional processing that I do down below just to make sure that I can get the location much easier than, because it's kind of buried deep in the REST API. So I get the location and category a little bit easier, and I don't have the rest of this snippet. So you'll have to look for it when we share the code with you. Okay, so the next thing is, now that I have this information, I've pulled it, doing an HTTP request, asynchronous. I now get to display it. And using React, it's really easy to display this information. The first thing I'm going to do is display the title in plain HTML. Second thing is get the event start time. And the reason why it has ACF, it's event.acf.event start time, is I'm using a plugin inside WordPress that exposes all the ACF fields in one nice little object. So I get the event start time, and then from my additional processing, I also get the location name of the first location that it's assigned. Now you can do more than that to get the actual or display more than one location, but I only needed one location to display on the front end. And so that's what produces this wonderful kiosk. So it's pretty simple. It looks really nice. Got the building map in the middle, today's events down the side, and I display the event title, the start time, and the location. Now, some of these locations can also be room numbers, and that's where the hierarchical category comes into play. But for this simple example, I've only defined the first location that I get from the event. And then I have the recently published articles on the bottom. So then I get to go back to my marketing director and say, hey, I got an awesome solution for you. It's not going to take that much time and budget. And their developers only have to code in HTML, CSS, and some simple JavaScript. What do you think about that?
I think you're even smarter than I thought you were before.
I know.
You're clearly a genius, Cory.
I know.
But while you were gone, I got a request from the orientation committee, and orientation's in 2 weeks, but they want to make an app. And I was like, well, I got a genius, so that shouldn't be any problem at all. So I've committed you to that, and and what they want to show all of the orientation events in their app. And I was like, this guy's like the master of Word docs. So can you help us out with that?
Let me guess, text files too?
They just said Word. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Okay, all right. Hopefully you never have to hear that request more than once. Okay, so.
Oh, so here's the app interface. Click to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's what it's supposed to look like.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Gotcha. And I'm supposed to have this to you when?
Well, the orientation's in 2 weeks. So,
2 weeks.
And we need at least a week for testing.
Good. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. The good thing is we have a solution for this. We can use the REST API just like we did previously. Except for this time, we may have to do a bit more because it's a mobile application. But hey, why don't we get even simpler than that? Why don't we just make a simple responsive URL that can be accessed over their phone to make it look like a phone app? That was my solution because 2 weeks is short. So we only have to do a couple things to change this around. So they want an orientation app that pulls events specific to orientation, right? So we only have to really change a couple pieces of information. Okay, we define the route again. We're getting events, but this time I only want 6 events instead of 10. And I'm going to change the event location taxonomy ID and the event category to pull from 2 categories instead of 1. I want to pull from all orientation events and all student ambassador events because we think that for the orientation students, maybe they would be interested in student ambassadors as well. So I basically copy pasted, okay? And I changed a couple pieces of data in my Vue.js little app and done. We already did that. We created the event category in WordPress. We changed the category in the REST API request. And now we get to drink lemonade and say, marketing manager, your app is done. 2 weeks before it's supposed to start.
So it took like 5 minutes.
That's how I do.
So you need to make it look a little harder than that. But I appreciate your work.
Okay.
So so that's it. That's 2 different ways to use the REST API to pull information out of a WordPress instance. That's advanced custom fields. That's how to get into the API. That's Vue.js. That's a lot of stuff. And I'm pretty sure that if you do that, then you can look this cool. And you can have this many suits if you really wanted to. So that link at the bottom is, that GitHub link has all of this stuff in it. It's got the 3 code bases for the WordPress vanilla version, the desktop version. It's got the kiosk, it's got the mobile, and then you can't see it because our picture's over it. And these slides are available here in that GitHub link too. You get access to the university.highermetric.com with that HT access link or credentials, and then you can go into WP admin with those other credentials and take a look at the back end of that. So it's really open for you guys to look in and play around with. And if you have any questions, please ask him. So let's show them proof that it works, Cory.
All right, let's do it. So a little demo time. Just a quick note about the repository. I've only included the, plain stuff for the kiosk and for the mobile app. They're really simple, so don't expect much. But and then I've also included the theme, which has everything in it. I just didn't include all of WordPress and all of the plugins that were used. But you can log in to the WordPress site and see what plugins were used and see anything else that we did in that WordPress site, which is not really much, but it gets the job done and it looks great. So let's take a look at this here. So inside WordPress, we have our events post type. So this is at university.highermetric.com. Maybe. Okay. So we have our events. Let's just take a look at one real quick. So we've got our advanced custom fields with date selectors, body content, category, location, presenter information, which is blank for this event. And then we've got our locations, which again, this is a hierarchical taxonomy, so we can have sub-locations as well. And then we've got our categories, such as lecture series, orientation, student ambassador, stuff like that. So this is our kiosk. Again, it's only in HTML and CSS and Vue.js, so it's really simple. But we've got that, and then we've got our mobile application, which ideally you would access over a phone. And then we've got our JSON API and our standard WordPress site. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a change. So in that event that we were in, so time to HMU, actually I don't even think this is, let's do best lecture series actually. So awesome lecture. So this first one. So let's call this, instead of awesome lecture, how to deal with REST API requests. Go ahead and update that. And so now that we've updated it in a single place, it's now available in the kiosk, in the mobile app, which it's not there because it's not in that category. But if we wanted to put it there, we could by just adding it to the orientation category.
Specify a location.
Oh yeah, you're right. Let's make that university. There we go. And we also have it in our main university app. So that's the power of the REST API. That is what we hope, or the ideal situation for a university is you can control access in one place, or have your data in one place, but it could be distributed across your campus through the REST API. And you can give access as you need.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple problems, right, that still remain in this implementation.
Yeah.
If you give a user access, they have access to all of your events across the entire university right now. So you need to think through some of those limitations as you consider how to use the API, or are we going to restrict them to only certain categories, and what do we build on top of this? But basically what we've got right now is that first kind of demo application that we can say, to take it back as a proof of concept and say, wouldn't it be great if we had this way to manage our content as a single source of truth? And that's where we want to go. So that's all we got. We appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much for being here. And thank you to the organizers, to everybody who helped put this conference on. It's been fantastic. Round of applause for those guys.
Nothing happens without presenters. So there's many presenters here, these guys, so let's give them a hand. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Remember to repeat the question for our.
Okay.
You did your own custom post for events?
Yeah.
So people who have an events plugin,
Uh-huh.
they, or us, use REST API in the same shape, way, form.
Yeah, so are you talking about like an events calendar pro or something like that?
Repeat the question.
So the question was, we defined our own custom post type, but what if you're using an events plugin? How do you expose that data to the REST APIs? That was your question, right? So with different plugins comes different challenges, and each plugin could be exposed to the REST API. I'm not sure. I'm not very familiar with Events Calendar Pro. Do we have the because they were out here. Is it exposed to the REST API?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Perfect.
How about event manager?
Events manager.
So
I'm sure we could find
how would
out.
you find out if it was or wasn't?
So I would actually go to WordPress and go ahead and look at WP JSON/WP version 2 and see if the route is there. So that's kind of the screen that we showed. Notice how we have posts and pages and etc. You could also look at the root and see if there's a custom namespace as well, which more than likely it'll have. So
They're like a find thing that you like control F thing that you could do and say.
yeah, so like ACF has a bunch here. And I think with Events Calendar Pro, they probably have their own as well. So just go to /WP JSON and kind of look for it there and see if it's there. And feel free to chime in, guys. I mean,
If it's a custom post type, you can also go to WP-JSON/types.
types.
That'll list all of your custom
Oh, not type. Types. Yeah. Yeah, WPV2 types. Yeah, so in this case, we have, attachment event, which shows ours as well. So because like Events Calendar Pro or even Events Manager, more than likely they're using a custom post type, and it's just called something else like event_manager or something like that, or it could be called event. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Any other questions?
It was easy.
What about for him?
No big deal.
Any other questions? You get 3 for a quarter, so come on, bring the second one.
Come on.
You were a kind managing or marketing director, I guess, because you were like, oh, just like 4 information fields and you're good. But when people are like, kiosk should show this information and this should show that information, and like, how do you like draw a line or whatever? How do you scale this? To different UIs and a lot of like pagination. I want to link for all your events and things like that.
The good thing is,
Question.
oh,
Repeat
you
the
want
question.
to repeat it?
Oh, so if I wasn't so nice and if this wasn't so easy, right? Like we just need all the same information in a couple different places. But if we wanted to show a different set of information in every different place and we needed to paginate, we need to do all these other things that we haven't been there yet, how do you scale it from here? Where do you go next? Is that?
And maybe add and submit an event from I think somebody covered that.
Submit an event from somewhere else. Yeah.
And you can use the REST API for that too. Again, we went over a very simple example, simplistic example, to where we're just pulling information, but the REST API is very useful for all of those things. So if the good thing is at the university level, the marketing director, because the Harris Center requested to do this, right? You can say, okay, we have all this data for you and it's available. Now you have to code it. So good luck. But there's ways, what I'm saying is there's ways to do it with the data that you receive from the REST API, including pagination. You can even post or create data using the REST API. So if you wanted to submit an event from an external source, for example, there's a way that you can submit it to the REST API and it will create it inside the WordPress app. So
Yeah, and what I would add to that is we started out with a long list of all the different types of metadata that you could have with an event, and we only talked about 3 or 4 pieces of data that get associated. So it could be that your event management UI in the back end is really huge and long, and it's got collapsible fields and those kinds of things in it, and you use the part that you need based on what kind of event you're managing, right? Do you upload a PDF to talk about, here's the flyer, or do you have a link to a certain other place? Those are all fields that you can define and then reference in different places. And so then your views really do become pretty different. Maps or whatever, right? So, we have like a
In fact, I think in your WordPress interface, you have like a drop a pin Google Map kind of thing.
Yeah, for the location.
For locations.
Right.
But you also need like, we show room numbers. And if you have 4 or 5 different buildings and you have room numbers for all those buildings, hierarchical categories is probably not the way you want to do that, because that list is going to be 500 items long.
Yeah.
And so you need to think a little bit more down the line in terms of, okay, we might be able to do a taxonomy for buildings across campus, but you might want to drop down once you get within those buildings. And that kind of balloons your scope and your development time and those kinds of things. But in terms of how the technology consumes that content, it's the same. And then it's just really a strategic question of working with the marketing director and saying, okay, we can expose all this information. We can manage these things all in one place. Now that we have that power, how do we use that responsibly and in a way that doesn't create more technical debt and more content challenges down the line?
Can you use the REST API to expose or get at all the posts for a multi-site? So say you had events, custom posts in many sites in your multi-site. Would you use one endpoint to grab them all, or would you have to?
So default out of the box,
question.
no.
The
Well,
question.
gosh, horrible. Thing.
Can you expose all of the endpoints across an entire multi-site and then consume that in one place?
Yeah.
So the short answer is no, not right out of the box. But I'm sure you could create some type of custom endpoint that goes through all the sites, gets all the events, and displays it in a way. I mean, that might be a little crazy, but each subsite, depending on how you set it up, whether it's with subdomains or subdirectories, will have JSON or REST API endpoints. So, but multi-site is just a whole different beast. And I don't know if anybody in here, I mean, we're all developers, has any experience with that. Unfortunately, I think the best solution would probably be to create some type of custom endpoint, use some programming to go through the sites and get those events that you need to expose in that one place, and that's how I would tackle it.
So the use case for that would be like rolling up blog articles from across an entire network.
Yeah, so like each academic department has its events on its own page, and then they all get aggregated up to
University site.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. That could work. Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you guys. Remember, there are closing remarks starting at 4:30 in the Commons area, including, I believe, door prizes. So come out for the closing remarks.
Thanks, sir.
Awesome. Good job, guys.